Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tracy Show. As you can see, unlike the past couple of weeks, I am not by myself today. I actually have an interview. I'll let my guest introduce himself here in just a moment, but I have a ton of commercials and bills to pay that I've got to pay before we get started. Remember, in September, I didn't put the date on here because I want you to go to my website, tracymedia.com/r-events. I will be doing a 12-hour telethon to raise money for this channel. I need new lights, as you can tell, a new computer, new editing system. So more details about that to come. The book is still going to come out in December. Hopefully, there's a link to buy that. Join our Facebook group. We have a hilarious. It's serious enough to talk about political issues, but I try to mix in a lot of hilarity because we need to laugh sometimes. So join our Facebook group. Like us on Facebook itself. I think we're up to 43 likes on Facebook. I would like to see that number at 100. And my ask, and I'll probably asking this all throughout the program, please subscribe to this channel. You all know that 1,000 subscribers is my goal. I'm at 109. That means we're 800, and my math is off, but I think that's 891 away from 1,000. I know we can do it before the end of this year is over. Subscribing literally costs you nothing. And if you so choose to see it in your heart to send me anything on Cash App, just know that it won't go to partying. It will go to this channel at Tracy Media 74 with the $ in front. So as promised, I'm going to let my guest introduce himself.
All right. Hello, my name is Jacob Peterson. I am involved with the Indiana Green Party at the state level. I am their treasurer. So basically, anything that involves with submitting reports to the Election Financial Commission, as well as just doing any providing assisting with any kind of funding, like say if we're about to sponsor any kind of events, I'm the guy that's in charge of handling the funds. So that's basically my role in the Indiana Green Party, which is kind of what I'm here to represent here on our podcast here. And then just in usual, other than that, outside of that, because that doesn't pay the bills at all. I that's my volunteer work. I work as a bank as a commercial loan processor. But yeah, other than that, that's who I am. That's what I do.
And just a note of transparency. I always want to be honest with my audience. I am also with the Indiana Green Party, but of course, I will interview anyone of any third party as long as you're not a disgusting Democrat or a repulsive Republican. You are certainly welcome to be a guest on this show. So we're gonna start all the way back to when you were 10, like 2 weeks ago, and talk about. You were supposed to laugh at that. Talk about
my audio cut out.
Oh, I said talk about when you were 10 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
What made you get involved with the Green Party, and then what made you specifically want to work with the Indiana Green Party?
The Indiana Green Party. Well, I think it all has to start off from the beginning. I grew up in a very conservative household, a very religiously conservative household. I grew up in a very conservative area. But it's kind of weird, my political journey. I started off kind of when I got into college, it's kind of like more moderate, very liberal on social issues, more conservative on fiscal issues. And then when, after the election of Trump and then just began to see everything, I began kind of reading more and kind of became more understanding of, more kind of leftist policies that I've been kind of given this gross misunderstanding of. And that's kind of how I became more and more and more kind of left wing. So that's kind of how more kind of my political evolution. So that when 2020 came, looking at the primaries, I just knew who I did not want to get. the nomination. And unfortunately, Joe Biden got the nomination in 2020. So for me, I was sitting there and I was like, you know what, time to go green, because I know what's we need to see in our country, specifically in regards to taking climate change seriously, uh, is not going to be taken care of under someone who is as moderate as the Biden administration. So that's when I um, said, hey, you know what, get my membership. I get involved with the Green Party. How I got involved at the state level um, was, I remember as I kind of got involved, I was reached out by the chair at the time, Pluto, and we chit chatted about our views, kind of compare and contrast. And he was telling me, he's like, hey, next time we have a leadership election, he's just like, we'll let you know, see if you're interested. So um, when the election first came up, they asked me to run for national delegate. So I ran and got elected for that. At the time, the state party was dealing with, unfortunately, some people who expressed some very anti-trans views. So, especially many state parties. The one I think in particular was Georgia at the time, and we were having to put up a vote to disassociate. So that's kind of how I kind of got involved initially and kind of got passionate. But the more I got involved with the party at a state level, because when you're collaborating with people at the state level, the more I kind of realized that I more enjoyed working at stuff that's more local, more kind of building those relationships, like setting up booths at prides and doing meet and greets. And I wasn't really into what was happening on the national level, although I think it's very important what's happening on a national level with our party. So for me, that's how I went from when our current treasurer, Michael Cooper, who decided to run for a different position so that he can run for mayor of Portage, which he's doing for this upcoming election cycle, which we'll get to in a moment. That's when I decided to run for treasurer, and that's where I'm at, the position where I'm at today.
And I hate that. No, I'll just ask you, what part of the state are you in?
I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so I'm northeast Indiana.
Okay, so wait a minute. So we got somebody to comment already. So we got comments in. So I'll just read the question. How do you balance your energies between environmental policies and That's a actually good question. How do you manage your energies between environmental policy and economic policy? That is actually a great question. No, thank you, Theus. Yeah. That's who that is.
Well, I say, for me personally, I see them as one and the same, balancing between the two. Like when we look at it, I remember I grew up, I said kind of more conservative area, but I remember my senior year of high school, I had a econ teacher who was very conservative, and I had an environmental teacher who was very left wing. And it's kind of funny. I think my environmental teacher really summed it up, because it was very interesting having these two teachers kind of clash with each other at school level. And I remember he put it best, and he said, when we would be like, well, this is what this teacher said, and he would say, well, kids, he goes, Mr. I forget his name, is trying to make you think like an economist. And a lot of economists, especially when you bring up environmental issues, they like to think of things. They tend to think things in the short term. They don't tend to fully, consider the environmental implications of the actions of organizations in the long term. Because at the end of the day, this is about scarcity of resources. The more we degrade, the common resources that we all share, the less farmable land that we have in regards to grow crops, for example. As we're seeing more and more land becoming unusable, the more degradation of our coasts due to rising sea levels. For them, they're thinking about the immediate. They're thinking about how they can make it to the end of the year to appeal to investors and to their bottom line. For them, they're not considering the long term in regards to true environmental policy. So for me, when I say what's the balance between the two, I say we have to. They're one and the same, but it's about understanding not so much how to appease each other economically and environmentally, because at a certain point they're going to come at an intersection um, when the resources are scarce and too scarce, and we're going to be stuck in a very poor situation um, where it's going to be too late. Um, so right now, when it comes to true policy, um, it's about finding ways of which we can make sure we have a much more sustainable economy in regards to environmental policy without it um, dipping too much into you know um, our economic bottom line. It is a very tough thing to navigate, no doubt. But I truly believe that if you look at the policies of the Green Party for more socialist ideals, as well as just the Green New Deal, which the Democrats ripped off of us, um, it does work in the long term. Um, but of course, we have to understand that, in America, we are, we are a melting pot of different ideals and different, you know, perspectives and different needs economically. So that is going to come with a lot of back and forth between parties and different perspectives, not just for us at the far left, those in the center left and the center right and the far right. I think we all understand the grave impact of the environment at a certain point when it becomes too late. I know a great example here in Fort Wayne. Like I can tell you, like our, the rivers here in Fort Wayne. We like to boast the three rivers, but if you pass by some of the three rivers, especially by Headwaters Park over here, heavily polluted. And it's really funny. You talk to some of the most far right Republicans, and they could look at that and go, "Yeah, that thing is polluted. We need to do something about that." And I think that's going to come with more education on the long-lasting impacts of our unsustainable policies. So for me, I think, yeah, there is a when I say the balance between environmental and economic policy, I think they're definitely one and the same. I think the better question is, a lot of times when we plan for things in the long term, sometimes we don't see that payoff immediately, which can hold back what people see as a striving economy. And especially in regards to poor communities, it is they're not really thinking about the long term. They're thinking about, look, I got to pay rent this month. I got to pay the bills. And when we're pursuing economic policy, and that's another big thing, economic policy, where my earbuds are just falling out today. I'm sorry. But when we pursue economic policies that can allow these individuals to allow us as a whole to not be fall victim to this thinking of the short term. So when I say when I see the difference between environmental and economic policy, I see them as one and the same, because they're both about our resources and them becoming more and more scarce. But it's a matter of how are we utilizing them, how are we protecting them in regards to short term versus long term. So that's kind of how I see that balance of those two.
Okay, follow-up question. Respectfully, they overlap, but are not on par with each other. There is a true conflict on how to address the system short-term versus long-term. How do you get consensus you need to achieve results?
Well, I think the better question, I think that's definitely the best question asked. Probably ask someone who's involved with Congress, who's used to coming with consensus. But even then, as we all know, when it comes to our current politicians today, a lot of times consensus involves really hardcore leeway to giving up on stuff that we desperately need to have in regards to legislation that gets passed. And ultimately, what is passed, it's like, well, it's good, but it's not going to solve the issue as much. For example, kind of the bipartisan infrastructure deal, great that it got passed. It's going to lead to some positive environmental impacts, such as the funding of more charging stations for electric vehicles, more funding for railways, and so on and so forth. But, there was a lot that was cut that really could have made the difference in regards to, hey, we could have had even more rails. I mean, look at
And
Japan with
I
their high
think,
speed rails.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Hmm.
that's where I want to get to, because it seems, well, it doesn't seem, because it's true. When an idea gets to Congress, such as you said yourself, the Democrats stole the Green New Deal. What they have is not the Green New Deal.
Hmm.
It's what I call kind of sort of like the Green New Deal, but it's a shell of it. It doesn't go
Hmm.
nearly far enough. Doesn't do what we actually need to do to address, the temperature rising, um, green jobs, etc. So look,
Hmm.
take an idea that usually a third party comes up with. Let's just
Hmm.
keep everything 100% honest. Take an
Hmm.
idea that comes from a third party, then they'll, you know, concede, negotiate, and the whole thing is gone. Besides, getting more people on the left in office that won't compromise. How do we get the public to engage on these issues? Because I think that's what's missing. If I can't figure it out. I'm like, how do you get the regular person, the everyday person that's concerned about paying their bills, putting food on the table? How do you get them to see the environmental impact and how it ties to the economics that they're experiencing, or the lack of economic opportunity?
I think it really just comes down to education. I mean, we can talk about. I mean, I think it is important, to write letters to our politicians, but at the end of the day, who are the politicians answering to? They're answering to the voters. And at the end of the day, when a when the economy isn't going so great, and a lot of people are struggling, especially with inflation these days, a lot of people are looking at the short term. There's like, well, this isn't working, so I'm just going to vote for the other guy. Even when we're in the midst of trying to figure it out, there's often this rapid change of in and out politicians, and I don't know if it necessarily, you know, helps either way, but I would say, that is the big question. How do you, put out um, something that can actually lead to kind of permanent change and understanding? And I think, it is it's a big basket to carry. It is something to where, in order for get people focused on environmental issues, you have to solve their immediate issues, affordable health care, affordable housing, affordable food, affordable education, people not being just drowned in death and not death, debt. um, but uh, when but at the same time, you're also trying to solve, you know, these environmental issues, and every issue connects each other in some way.
They
So
really
it
do.
is. They really do. I always say, like, probably, I was just talking to. I'm actually involved with an LGBT group, activist group in my workplace. We were just talking about how almost everything connects with voting rights. When it comes to gerrymandering, when it comes to suppression of vote, um, you know, politicians are kind of picking their voters. So it's kind of led to, you know, not only states that now have like just ridiculous super majorities of either party, but you also have these situations where um, uh, where where's it going with this? Where you have such large super majorities, but then the parties are just becoming so polarized. And it's maybe one thing if it's fine in a more left wing state, because we're seeing them start to take the appropriate, you know, precautions in regards to environmental policy. But then it's kind of getting offset by a lot of these more red states where they're just kind of taking the book and throwing it out. So it is a push and pull. It feels overwhelming and impossible. So for me, what I say is that, I don't know the solution. I'm not the expert of how to mobilize and get people's minds changed. But I will say that step one is education and incorporating kids from the beginning, you know, the severity of the situation we're in and, what we need to do about it. And in many ways, if you're seeing what Gen Z has been saying and doing, you kind of see that it kind of already is happening. And a lot of it is kind of trying to get that, you know, not from the bottom up, trying to educate the young to bring them to the old. It's now the young having to educate the old. And, uh, and as I've known with discussions with my parents, it's a little bit more stubborn. But, it takes everyone, ages 1 to 100, people from left to right, to understand the severity of climate change and where we're heading. And unfortunately, when you have too many people that are focused on the short term, both, those of, corporations that are just about appealing to their investors, to, hey, the family next door that's just trying to, you know, afford the mortgage and afford food for the table, that becomes these, extreme levels of complexities. So, in fact, sometimes even education, when people know it, they're just like, that's great and all, but, I'm thinking about tomorrow, not 10 years from now. So it's going to take more than education, but education is still the first step. So this now leaves the bigger question of, where do we go beyond that? And that's the question that I'm just like, well, I don't know. That's
I
the
think
question.
I agree with you. Education is definitely important, but I want to shift the focus just a little bit. And again, if you're watching, please put your questions in the comment section. I will do my very best to get to them. I appreciate your questions. So, the kind of the next questions I want to get to in terms of what you actually do as treasurer with the Indiana Green Party. I know
Absolutely.
that, and I'm going to say what I think you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and please correct me. So, what I think you do is when, and this is only when somebody's running for an election,
Mm-hmm.
not the tabling and not the community events. Those are just funded if we have the funds to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But are you overall in charge of what each candidate gets, or are you more super like say? And this is not happening, audience. Let's just say I was running for office. I'm not running for office. Let me put that out there. I am not running for office. But if I were, and I had my
Mm-hmm.
own treasurer, would you and that treasurer coordinate, or would you be the treasurer of the campaign?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I'm happy you're announcing your candidacy, and
I'm
whatever you're
not
running for,
announcing my camp.
you have my full
I
endorsement.
am not running for office. I refuse to run for office.
But let's just say that. But so for basically what I do, I can't do. There's certain transactions within reason. Going down and purchasing, uh, maybe a tablecloth for tabling events and stuff. But when it comes to candidates, funding, their candidacies, typically we have to go to the actual state board of our party, and we put it to a vote of, you know, one of us has to give a proposal, and then how much we want to propose to give to a candidate, and then we make the transaction. A great example being, I wasn't the state treasurer at the time, but I was the treasurer for the campaign for our Secretary of State candidate, David Witterer. And I proposed that that the party would give us so much money, and because we're a small party, we have limited resources, so we wanted to keep it reasonable, and we just said, hey, could you, give us money just for the website, just so that we can last the year, just have the website, because really, you almost can't have a campaign these days without a website for people to go and see your platform and so on and so forth. So that's kind of an example of what we do in regards to funding, supporting candidates. But we also, that's and basically what my job is in that role is to just do the transaction. I get the approval from the board, and then they're like, all right, Jake, make it happen. So then, whatever it is, whether I'm sending a check or whether I'm doing ACH transfer, online transfer to their account, I'm the one that just handles the money. Most of the time, I need to get. In fact, I would say 99% of the time, I need their approval to do that, unless, of course, I'm reimbursing somebody who covered something on our behalf. That we were supposed to. So, yeah. So that's mainly my job. It's filing reports and then doing any transactions the board approves.
Now, when you file, we're going to get really detailed, and I don't need comments in the comment section, Senator Tracy and Governor Tracy. Those are not happening. I'm not running for city council, mayor, state rep, president. I'm trying to think of every office. Anything that has an office, do not. I was using myself as an example, not saying I'm running for office. So when you're filing these reports, for example, if someone not named Tracy was running for, well, no, let's just use David as a example. When you file those reports in terms of finances, who do they get filed to? They get filed to the Indiana board, and what's that board's name?
Yeah, so that gets filed with the campaign finance department with the Indiana Election Commission. When it comes to state candidates, we have to file those at the state level. So we actually have to send those to the State Department, which is in our capital, Indianapolis. What's actually really nice is that for statewide candidates, they actually have online software to where I actually fill those reports on the Indiana Election Commission website, where I just fill out all the information, all the things that came out of the bank account, things that came into the bank account, any donations that were, cash or check, anything that was. Sometimes we also have to report in-kind donations. So let's say if someone let us, borrow a table for an event or what have you, and I have to enter that in as what we call an in-kind contribution, where they're not giving us money, but we have to kind of assess the kind of value of the service that they're providing that normally that we would pay for, but they're donating that. So again, another example would be somebody donating a table, or somebody saying, hey, you know what? So that the party has a table at this event, I'll pay for it instead of it coming out of the party's account. And then we just report that as being, we were able to do that event because this person paid for it and this is the amount they paid for it. So it definitely collects like that. On a much more complex level, it's also, if we were a bigger party like, Democrats or Republicans, a lot of those parties and even the candidates tend to get involved with, lending needs. Like they may actually take out a loan for their candidacy. Personally, if I ever ran for office, and usually I would never advise that for anybody that would, or else you end up like, I don't know if we all remember when Newt Gingrich ran for president back in 2012.
Oh my gosh, he did. He took a loan out, didn't he? He took out
a bunch of loans. He's in millions of dollars of debt. And his campaign, a decade after the campaign, is still in debt, millions of dollars in debt. So
yeah, we got some little wise people, little smart alecky comments in the comment section. I'm just gonna run these out. There will be no Tracy Carson Exploratory Committee.
But
Make America Tracy again
would be a great name for one.
Well, we're gonna go to this serious question. Audience members, I know the two of you, but that's okay. So, what makes it easy for a third-party local candidate to gain traction given the financial environment? I almost want to answer this question myself, but you're the guest. I'm going to let you answer.
Well, I'd love to hear what you say. But I would say, given the financial environment, it is a little tough to find donors. But a lot of times, if you reach out to, kind of some of the right people, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to donate, $5, $10 here and there. And, I remember our candidate, David Wetterer, he did a lot of, calling with our, state list of our, the uh, registered Greens in the state to kind of campaign. And it's kind of surprised actually how successfully he was able to, fundraise. But I always say that your campaign is usually has a better start the more that you can contribute yourself in a way. Like I think, the Green Party, as a whole, I would say us as a state party, we've always been, you want to run, we're here to support you as best we can. You know, we can't contribute tens of thousands of dollars, obviously, but hey, if you need like enough to get your website started, hey, you know what? That's a start. And we're willing to help you out if when we're looking at it. I would say, it's always best if you have the finances yourself to help get yourself started, even just a little bit, maybe for the website, maybe just, hey, enough for the gas so that you can get around and drive and collect those signatures to get on the ballot. Just that small stuff just to get started. I think that is really the start of, first a little bit on yourself. If you need help from the party, we can help you out a little bit. And then, as you start to kind of do more kind of cold calling, or you kind of do more knocking on doors, you can actually start finding some more traction. Another thing I always advise is, tabling at events is also crucial, especially, and looking for more advertisements where you actually have a captcha code and you can get to the website and hey, bam, boom, you can donate on the website. There you go. So that's usually kind of what I advise initially, but we're always here to help. At the end of the day, you'd be surprised how even a campaign with just a little amount of money how successfully it can do. I mean, I remember this past 2021, the election of in New Jersey, it was the state majority leader, the Democrats, was defeated by a Republican. And typically, if you're a majority leader, it's because you come from a district that's heavily, of your side. But he was beaten by a Republican who was running on like less than, I think, $3,000. So, and that was for a state senate seat. So make it more microscopic, go to a local level like city council, and it could be way less than that. So so I definitely hear what you're saying. It's definitely kind of frustrating where you're just like, oh man, I don't got that much money. But you'd be surprised.
Unfortunately, that's what it takes until our, I know politicians say, oh, let's overturn Citizens United. Like, they could just do that. Like, you kind of forgot the Supreme Court kind of in the middle of there, but hey, let's just forget all that. And I know I should know this as a member of the Green Party in the state of Indiana. Does the Green Party have a fundraising committee?
We do indeed have a fundraising committee. I'm trying to remember. I think we met last Saturday, I believe. I'm trying to remember. We're getting started with the year, so we're trying to shift around our schedules. So we're still trying to figure out when we're scheduling things. So I think we had the first one for the year not last Saturday. That was last weekend. That would have been the Saturday before last Saturday. I'm still getting out of the weekend. There's a specific reason I asked that, and I'm not going to ask it on air. I'll just ask you to stay a couple minutes after, and then I'll propose my question, but I'm not going to ask it then. So, again, the comments of Governor Tracy and Make America Tracy. No, I don't know where this conversation comes from. There's no way I would run for none. I don't have what. I'll say it this way. I know I could win. See, that's not my problem. I have no problem winning. I have an easy to spell name. It's an easy to remember name. My problem is governing. I don't compromise. Period. I don't believe in compromise, and I won't compromise. And I know that's what you have to do when you get elected. I'm like, that doesn't suit me. Yeah. I always say that, when it comes to, uh, issues, compromise, when you kind of look at, Bernie Sanders, for example, that a lot of times you may find that you actually, on the other side, agree more than you think. I think one of the great examples being if you look at the bailouts of the late 2000s, during kind of the tail end of the Bush administration. Um, you had so many, when that legislation was getting debated, the people who were coming out against that legislation were not only the far left, you know, there was also the far right. There was, the far right was saying, this is capitalism. If they were supposed to go down, they're supposed to go down. That's how it's supposed to work. No matter how catastrophic it is. And then you have the far left. They're just like that. See it as their comeuppance. They're just like, you know what? This is what we've been saying all along. This is what can happen, and you know what? It's time for us to let it happen. So, and it's interesting when you actually see, you know, far left and far right politicians often collaborating on issues. Like I forget the bill, but I believe Ted Cruz just collaborated with Bernie Sanders on an issue.
And
So
he also
I think
collaborated with Raphael Warnock. I'm like, what?
yeah, it is that thing where it's actually it probably wasn't Raphael Warnock, and I think he did contribute with Bernie Sanders.
I
I'm trying to
thought
remember off the
Bernie
top of my head.
Sanders and Rand Paul collaborated on something.
Probably, yeah. Or I know he did something with Josh Hawley in regards to the what it was a couple years ago with the what am I thinking of, the stimulus, the about doing a stimulus for of like a $2,000 stimulus, which then of course got knocked down to being like, what was it, like $1,200 one?
14.
Yeah, 14 was it? Yeah, but it does go to show. Like for me, I don't like to think of politics as left to right. I like to think of it. Let me get my fingers in. There we go. I don't think of it as left and right. I think of it as a circle. Eventually, once you get so far left, eventually you end up in the far right. Once you end up enough far right, you end up in the far left. I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard, for example. She was considered, at one point a possible VP pick for Bernie, and now she's in the fringe of the right wing.
I don't know, but let's go to the. Okay, so now we have a serious question. Thank you, Fierce. Does the Green Party have a public position on reparations or criminal justice, police reform? I know the answer to this, but since I'm not the one being interviewed, Jacob, take it away.
Absolutely. I don't know if we actually have a set stone on reparations specifically. I know it's one of those issues that I think when it comes up, most of us tend to agree with reparations as a concept, and then but it feels like it doesn't really come up as much. Typically, we're often focused on the issues that affect kind of the most amount of people at one setting. Like the environment, for example. And then when it comes to issues specifically related to communities of color, the LGBT community, we usually focus on like the big issues that are specifically happening in those communities. So typically, even before we often don't have time to get to reparations when we're talking about assisting communities of color, because we're often talking about probably number one, sadly, criminal justice reform, which shouldn't even be a thing. We shouldn't even have to be talking about the criminal justice system working and not hurting the people it's there to serve. But unfortunately, this is where we're at. And for us, we've been really big on supporting policies that will utilize local, statewide, federal funding, less towards the recidivism that we typically see, just throwing people in prison, lock the key, and then when their time's up, let them out, and then give them nothing, so that their only option left is just to do what they did before and ends up the cycle. But it's about not only just kind of loosening some of the laws, especially our drug laws, but also a really core thing is looking towards resources in regards to corrections and local law enforcement that more tackles um, recidivism, talking about what we can do in regards to, pushing for programs that assist with getting over drug addiction. Just throwing somebody in prison, that's not actually going to solve the issue. Actually, having more programs that curtail that issue. Also, supporting programs that believe in um, kind of reaching out to kind of kids when they're young, kind of show them what they can make of themselves, and their options in life, and making education affordable. As I'm going,
Yeah,
I'm kind of weirdly going back to what we were talking about earlier about how every issue connects.
Here's what I'll say, and I am never afraid to criticize a party that I'm in. The Green Party would be, and I'm talking about national, and definitely in Indiana, would be suited to take a more stronger stance on reparations. One, because let's be honest, there's not a lot of black people in the Green Party. Can I just be honest and say that there's just not? There's, when you think of Green Party, you think of somebody white, somebody male, somebody between the ages of maybe 19 to 26, and then you kind of skip, and then you kind of get older. And if I have to be the one that pushes that, because I think that's as a person who is strongly for reparations. And I'm not talking about reparations for add-on communities. I'm specifically talking about for African American who were the descendants of slaves. I think the Green Party is making a huge mistake. Huge. Mm-hmm. It would be something that would cause me to say, maybe, not that I'm going to, but maybe this isn't the party for me. Because that, to me, that speaks kind of like, I'm not in the higher up, so I can't say, well, do it and I'll leave. But I think it would be a great benefit. I don't think anybody in the Green Party is against it. Like you said, I don't think we're all like, oh, no. But I think more of a, hey, we're for reparations for the African American descendants of slaves would just speak volumes. And it may help to get more diversity, because we just are not a diverse party. We just are not. And that, as a black person that tries to speak to other black people, it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell.
Yeah.
And so I would say definitely we need to consider that in our kind of life. And I didn't even realize that Thea's just had the same point that I did. And yet they have clear positions on the LGBTQ community, which the Green Party does. A smaller group than the black community speaks volumes. That's what we're dealing with. And I think when we address that, we'll be far better in a position to address what I think we do. Not to just bring out here, because you're not, I'm the Green Party, you're the Green Party. But
no, absolutely. And you do bring up a really good point. It is a situation where we're kind of, looking here about how to appeal to a broader demographic, and you nailed it. That is basically the party makeup. It seems to be, in fact, I would say, like, at least here at the state level, predominantly, a wider base of individuals who are involved in the party. And I think you bring up something really good that I think I'm going to bring up at our next state meeting, because it's like, it's something that I don't really think about until I'm talking, and that's the thing, like, why it's so important to talk to voters, even if they disagree, or they're just like unsure of it, because they'll tell you what you want, and I think it's easy to go, nah. But as I'm listening, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'd be the same way, because I'm from the LGBTQ community, and if I'm hearing someone talk about the issues of the needs of one community and never getting to mine, it's like, dude,
why are you talking?
Why would I vote for it?
Exactly. And I think again, thank you for going to serious points, because this is another point, because what it's doing is it's making us invisible. Like, no, We just got a bunch of white voters out there, and that's all we. It's like the Democratic strategy. Let's just appeal to middle America white people and forget about everybody else. Let's just forget about them. And that's what I don't want to see the Green Party do. I know black people are concerned about environmental issues. Our children have asthma in way higher numbers than probably any community out there. I know that we are, more impacted by the lack of law enforcement, um, just meting out their own form of justice. But when it comes to reparations and not linking that, that's a launch pad. So yes, when you have that meeting, just be like, well, Tracy said. Matter of fact, we'll talk off air. But um, I just think that point is so relevant because it just that I think that's my frustration is it's like sometimes I feel like why am I here? I'm just talking and talking and nobody's listening. Now I know you guys are listening to me. That's why you're here and that's why Pluto said, "Hey, Jacob, come on." But if I'm talking to especially the National Party, it's like, what and huh? Like I said, I don't think anybody at the national level or the state level is against reparations. But it'd be nice, to have a strongly worded statement. That's what I'm saying. So, and more than a statement, it's like, look, this is how much, this is how we're going to get it, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Just exactly what we did for Medicare for All. Medicare for All was basically a Green Party idea, if we want to just be honest about it. Yes, Bernie Sanders made it more popular, and, I will always give him credit for doing that because he basically took an issue that few people were talking about and put it right in the national focus. We need to do the same thing with reparations. So that's my stump yard for the day. Okay, so Marlon has a question. Do you feel it's better for a third party to just build a war chest to one day win, or is it better to just go for the next election regardless of how much money they have? That is a good question, Marlon.
I think that's a great question. I think first off, I always say strategize in regards to where you're running, because that's really going to be the big determinant of how much money you're going to need to spend in regards to advertising, and also kind of having a plan. Before you can think of money, you have to think about what are my chances of winning? What are my goals here? Because even if you're running a conservative district, maybe you need to accept like, oh, maybe I'm not going to win, but maybe I can get the ball rolling on people understanding the issues that matter to our community. So in regards to how that plays financially, if you're running in a much more left-wing district where you're not going to run too much into the questions of are you going to be scary word for third-party candidates, the word spoiler. But that's why we strategize.
Don't ever say that word. We'll be here 2 hours. Be going off.
We'll be here. We'll be here a long time.
I mean,
but that's why we strategize. That's why we strategize where we run, and a lot of people are surprised to find like even in really small towns, small towns that you would never think a Green would win. Hey, you're in a small town. If you are well ingrained in that community and they know you. You can be surprised how many people you can convince for people to vote for you in that community. So for me, I'm always thinking about less about the numbers of finances and more on the numbers of how big is the voting block that the seat you're running for is. Also, how left wing is it? And then from there you can be like, okay, how much money is it going to be? If this is like saying the city of Fort Wayne, Indiana. If you don't mind me plugging a bit, we're actually looking for candidates to run for our next municipal elections. If we're running for somebody who's running for a city council district like the one I'm in right now, this is a very left-wing district. You only need to collect, a little over 100 signatures around the ballot, and you have to focus on this area. So you can do more stuff on your own. You can do more just going door to door to door, and almost do it almost timeless. Whereas when it comes to something that's more citywide, you're probably going to need to start investing in much more signage that says your name, so that because you're not going to hit every single house in the holes in Fort Wayne, in the second largest city of Indiana.
I was going to say, how many people does Fort Wayne have?
Does Fort Wayne have? Gosh, I'd have to look up.
I know it's less than ours because I'm in Indy, so I'm like, well, I know I'm in the most popular. So whatever it is,
population of Fort Wayne. And the crazy part about Fort Wayne is that it's really 265,000 people.
See, that's nothing. See, to me, that's not. I'm like, 260,000. Try a million. We have a million. And we're what? The 15th largest city in the United States. We used to be 10, then we fell to 11, then went to 13, now we're 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know people that live in towns of just a few thousand people, so it's...
See, I don't know any of these people. If somebody lives in a small town, please come and educate. I literally am like, okay, now in terms of Indianapolis, is it here or is it here? Because that's where living in this city, that's where I think of everything kind of being centered. Hence our nickname, the Circle City, and all the roads kind of go through and all that. But come on, now we got this. See, I thought we was done with this. I'm not running for city council. Now that's just a waste. And first of all, that is not how council is spelled. It's CONSIL. Thank you. And then, not that I'm running, but I do want to go to his more serious point. So we agree on a variety of issues and policies. But I'm done saving other groups' votes while they pretend mine isn't even there. But thank you for being so clear and available. So thank you, but he's pretty much making the same point I am. I'm like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff,
thank you very much.
hey. And I do think that's, and I don't know how many times I've said this at our parties. I'm kind of tired of being the only person that looks like me at the table. Like, no, this can't be. There's got to be more people out there like me. I know there are. Where to find them is the tarnation. I don't know. But I think we need to really start having that type of discussion. And wait a minute.
They are determined. They're determined.
So you're saying if Tracy started saying now she has a chance to be mayor in 2026. No, because we don't elect mayors in 2026. We go 2023, 2025, 2027. It's every other odd year. Don't ask me how I know that, because we have a primary coming up in Indianapolis for mayor.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's going to be a big one. Yeah, because that's a pretty...
Well, we got some losers.
That's tough to get on the ballot in Indianapolis and anything. I've even seen some of the smaller seats, and they're like, you need thousands of signatures. I'm like...
Thousands, and that was my point. I'm like, well, you could divide up in neighborhoods, but you're still talking about thousands. No, not... Oh, gosh! Will we stop this? See, this is why guests don't come on the show, because they have to deal with this type of thing. No.
I'm down.
I am not running for office. There are way more qualified people than me. Way more.
Yeah. But I do think you bring up really good points in regards to, appealing to outside of our general kind of demographic that we've been kind of stuck with for so long as a party nationally and at the state level. I know for us, at the state level, we're just trying we're just trying anybody and everybody, as long as you believe in our, our platform of people on planet over profits. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's our big thing. We've had people try to join the party that, we'll chit chat with them and they express some pretty vehemently, anti-LGBT views, or maybe they'll just,
and they're running for
they'll express concerning views, and they'll ask us about joining the Green Party, and we'll compare and contrast views, and we're like, cool. So the only thing we agree upon is that marijuana should be legal. Okay, well, guess what?
Now that's the one thing that's probably going to keep me up. It's my religious conviction. I'm like, I want it, but I'm like, So it's the one thing I'm struggling with, and I'm just like,
Yeah, and then they just and then I'm just like, you can just go to another party. There's other parties that are like cool with that, and it's like, and it's such a minor issue. It is an important issue for us, but it's just like, it's just kind of like, cool. I think you thought green
Probably.
and you thought marijuana instead of the environment, and that's part of it. But we're mainly about you know you know
You
saving
know
the planet, people,
what?
planet over profits. As we say over and over again.
We need
Um,
a. Wait a minute. I didn't mean to cut you off. If y'all don't stop with these crazy comments, we only need 100 signatures. So we need only 100 signatures. So 25 a week. No, I would need. Let's see. Indianapolis has 1 million people. If I was running for at large, I would need at least 10% of the last voting population. That would be like
yeah.
10,000. I would need. Okay.
I think last time I talked to the representative of Indianapolis, and they said it was 5,000 signatures.
Yeah, it's somewhere between that
for an
5 and
actual
6.
district, an actual
per district,
not congressional, but a city council district.
Right, and that's not an at-large seat because we have at-large candidate.
You guys are different because you guys do city. You guys don't do city council, county council. It's like combined into one. It's city county.
Right.
Council.
Yeah, because we're Indianapolis / Marion County, but there's really no other city in Marion County but Indianapolis. So, okay, they do know black train. Yes, this is a no comment. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Weed is not,
and sometimes we just focus on the latter point and not the former point. It's like it's I do think it's important that we, especially with the news cycle these days, that we stay united. It feels like what's being attacked right now is representation of people of color in the LGBT community, especially the black community, with African American studies getting the crap kicked out of by the governor of Florida, and it's just kind of like it does show.
I got money says it's on its way to Indiana. I'm like, okay, how long is it gonna be? It'll take us what?
It's already on its way.
Yeah, I'm like,
I hate to break to you. Yeah, it's already on its way. In fact, in regards to, I know LGBT legislation, the similar "Don't Say Gay" bill that's in Florida, that passed in Florida, just passed the House today, I think, or just passed the committee in the House today, and then a bill in support of book banning, which is passed in the Indiana State Senate today, and what's even worse is that on the state legislature level is that when it comes to the state of Indiana, the governor, Eric Holcomb, he's a Republican, but he's also made it clear that he doesn't really particularly care for social issues. He's more on fiscal issues, whatever. What really sucked is that when the state passed the ban on transgender individuals in sports, he vetoed it.
Which was the right thing. I'm like, oh, he did something that made sense. I'm like, oh.
But here's the thing.
The state legislature
legislature overturned the veto. And you know what it did? All they needed was a simple majority.
Yeah, they needed a
51%. That's not how it works in the national level or in a lot of states. You have to have like a 2/3. And for them, it was a simple majority. It's like, what's the point of a governor at this point if you're literally just going to pass something? He says no, and all you need is 51%. So it is a concerning time to be in, and this is part of where that activism on our part, especially in regards to, and it's not something, and it's as simple as just writing emails and letters to your local state representatives, and they do read those, and that is a concern of theirs. Whether they follow through, chances are probably not, but it still is important to reach out, and let your voice be heard, because the more you sit in silence, the more it enables individuals who have much more disgusting agendas to take care of that space that otherwise you would have been speaking out on, to speak louder on their behalf and give the perspective that everyone agrees with them.
I understand. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you did say that you wanted to talk about Michael Cooper's campaign.
Yes, Michael Cooper. He is. He just announced he's running for mayor of Portage, Indiana. It's a smaller town in Northwest Indiana. We actually have a pretty nice, strong, chapter there. Northwest Indiana has given him support. We also have Joe Kahn, who's running for city council in Hobart, Indiana. So we already have two candidates so far in Northwest Indiana, and so right now we're just kind of plugging them right now. We want to encourage them. I believe if you want more information, you can go to our website where we have them advertised, or we will be having them advertised pretty soon. Again, early in the year, so we're still getting everything situated for us to like have our page where we advertise who's running for what and where their websites are at. So that is something that we're still getting set up. But so far, our two candidates so far in the Northwest, and one of the big reasons why we make a lot of appearances is also just to promote the party and for people who are interested in for running under a label. Even if it's in some small town and who knows where, we're really interested to see what impact you can make at that level. You'd be surprised. I've met guys who've been elected mayor of their small town, who
Yeah.
had never considered running for, never considered electing anybody who's been that pro environment before, and how they have that connection with the community, how they relate to the people in their community, and and they end up winning. So I always say, we're open to hearing anything and everything. I know here in Fort Wayne, as someone who's from Fort Wayne, Indiana, I'm saying, hey, look, we have, one in our much more left-wing districts that I think we can really win in. District 5, which is the one I'm in, and District 6, which involve just a little over 100 signatures. And, especially in small towns and throughout the Indiana, you even have to collect less than that just to get on the ballot for city council. And,
Yeah.
municipal elections are really the primo time to run. So we're just
Right.
like, hey, does anybody want to run? Like, it's like, and then, once we get people interested, it's like, hey, well, where, just to make sure we're on the right page, where do you stand on these issues? And, we really can emphasize, and how do you plan to run your campaign? What do you plan on running on? And, but a lot of times it's kind of tough to find people to run. It's definitely big events, and I think a lot of times it's the exposure. Yeah, it's kind of it. What else do you do in life that involves you knocking on people's doors and saying, "Hi, my name is," and introducing yourself to just random people in your neighborhood? Like almost nothing, unless you're selling Girl Scout cookies. And to be honest,
No.
like Girl Scout cookies, I'm going to say yes to, but I don't know if I'll say yes to a candidate. Like,
I don't know, $6 a box. I'm like, well, maybe.
I if I have the cash on me, I don't even think twice.
Oh no, they take debit cards.
They take debit cards now.
Yes, they do. Don't ask me how I know they take debit cards, but yes, I do know they take debit cards.
I don't know. I thought I always ran to the ATM every single time, but now I guess now all I need is a debit card now.
You have to do that. Make a brief fundraising pitch to all of those who may be interested in contributing to the Indiana Green Party.
Well, I will tell you this. In regards to fundraising, it helps us be able to fund more and more candidates so that we can we help their campaigns. Hey, the more money we have, the more we have to expend to, hey, not just help pay for the websites, maybe help pay for signage, help pay for events they may want to table in the local communities. This is, the more money that we have as a state party, the more we're able to assist our candidates to do that, as well as for us as a party to, table events and do much more outreach so that we can build our population and build our membership. In regards to, fundraising, it's probably, one of the most important things because, when it comes to marketing, almost, forms of free marketing are getting slimmer and slimmer by the day. Yeah, but the good news is that, in this online age that, it's easy as simply as putting out a post, but it's a matter of being able to market yourself through various means so that people can be able to see and give you that level of visibility. Um, so I think in regards to fundraising, hey, you want us to be more active, more active. That gives us more the ability to be much more seen, and even better, especially we're in the middle of lawsuit right now for ballot access, and Indiana has the most restrictive ballot access laws for third party candidates, um, more than any other state. We have to collect more signatures than any other state. I believe it's like I believe it's 1 or 2% of the Secretary of State vote has to be the amount of signatures you have to collect, and I believe that's 50,000 signatures, which is not an easy thing to do, especially when you have the beginning of January to July to collect all the signatures. And when it comes to ballot petitioning, there's services that do ballot petitioning, professional services where we can pay for them to go out and collect signatures. But a lot of times it's like $1 per signature. And yeah, we don't have that kind of money to throw on collecting signatures to get for a statewide office that we don't know if we're going to win. And even if you go down the line, go down to like even mayor, like Indianapolis, for example, that would still be a lot of signatures. So that money also helps us, for the possibility in the future, like, hey, when we see an opening, maybe we can cut it easy and pay for ballot petitioners, which is service that many third parties have. Usually the people that can afford that are usually the rich guy who wants to mount an independent campaign. But for us here at the local level, like for Green Party, it's almost impossible. But also a big thing, especially with our lawsuit, helps us afford attorneys so that we can fight these unfair laws, these extremely undemocratic laws for gaining ballot access, to get onto the ballot, and for people just to see us on the ballot, let alone people just to know we exist, just to see us on the ballot and know that we're an option. Because a lot of people don't understand how to write in candidates. But those things are, if you want to see more left-wing candidates, much more left-wing parties, we are going to need more funding so that we can actually make that a reality. Especially and another big thing I'd also recommend is that, for us as third parties, and it's not just us, it's us, libertarians, and the Constitution Party, we're all advocates for the ranked choice voting, because, it's like the one form of voting, and then we're seeing a lot of success of it in states in Maine and Alaska, where we can, where we actually have more of a chance, and we can be like, hey, you know what? You don't have to worry about, one guy winning. You rank the choices that you want on the ballot for who you want to vote for. So for us, that also gives us the funding to also be able to, in regards to fighting for our ballot access, also when we run campaigns, to advocate more for ranked choice voting, where, hey, even if we're not going to win that election, we're running primarily on a campaign of ranked choice voting, and we're getting the idea into people's heads, and it's pretty popular across the spectrum, left to right. People want more options at the ballot box. They're tired of the two-party duopoly, and they're looking at it, and a lot of people are just like, that's something I really want. And the more we can be vocal about it, the more we can be seen with that, the more that reality becomes a possibility. So, and a lot of it comes down to, well, can we financially afford to, be able to do a lot of this stuff, to afford kind of the marketing in regards to ad space, and so on and so forth. So it's a matter of, you probably have heard the phrase of, you get as much out of something as much as you're willing to give. And that really is the case. As much as we're going to succeed as a party is depending on how many people are willing to give to us. And I remember 2018, it was pretty easy because it was pretty popular to be leftist at that time, and now we're in 2022, 2023, and it seems to be the narrative that much more conservative opposition is starting to get the upper hand on the dialogue, sadly. But still, we need to keep we need to keep on going, chugging through it, no matter where the news cycle goes to. And where it ends up. So I think it's really crucial for us to keep alive and keep breathing. And unfortunately, in this day and age, my ball's plenty. So for us, for us to see as a party, if you want to see us succeed as a party, and hey, you don't have to contribute that much, and as much as you can, we always take whatever we can. Hell, I mean, if you go to our website, we have free memberships, or if you only can donate so much, we'll take that as well. So for us, there's definitely a lot of things we can do with our funds that we obtain, and we try to be good stewards of what we have with that. But the most important thing is just knowing that what that money can be used for, and what we use that for is simply just to get our name out. So the more we're going to be able to generate that, the more you're going to be able to see us, and the more visible we're going to be.
And tell us that website so that people can visit it and make that donation.
Absolutely. You go to greenpartyin.com.
That in a couple hours will be linked in this description of the video. I want to thank especially my guests. You do not know how much I was on struggle street these last 2 weeks, months, not having a guest. Oh my goodness. I'm like, I need some guests to come on. So definitely thank you for coming. Thank you for Pluto for suggesting that you come on. I definitely appreciative of you. Thank you to everybody that watched. I'm not going to call them Heckle and Jekyll, but I'm not running for office. But I invite you, if you watch this video after, like tomorrow, just make a comment anyway. Make a comment, subscribe to this page. 891. All we have to get is 891, and I can hang that YouTube trophy right in the back of me and say, look what we did. So thank you. And Jacob, if you want to stay around for another 5 minutes, I got another question for you that I don't want to ask on air. Everybody have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Sounds good.